My parents begged me not to wear my uniform to my brother's wedding. The military is embarrassing, but I walked in, wearing my dress blues and a silver star. 150 guests went silent. 12 veterans stood up, silver star in the room. My family froze. The string quartet stopped playing one instrument at a time. First the cello, then the viola, then the second violin, trailing off mid-phrase like a sentence that forgot its own ending. And then the first violin, the last one standing, pulled its bow from the strings and went quiet, and the silence that replaced it was the loudest thing I'd heard since a morning in a country I don't name in casual conversation. I had taken maybe 10 steps into the ballroom. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I wasn't trying to be seen. I was going to walk to table 9, near the back, away from the head table, exactly where my mother had arranged for me to sit, and I was going to be quietly, completely myself for one evening before flying back to the life she'd spent a decade pretending didn't exist. But an old man near the head table had other plans. He had silver hair and a spine that age hadn't touched, and he was wearing a tuxedo with the specific bearing of a man who wore a different uniform for most of his life. He set down his champagne glass with a precision that was almost ceremonial. His eyes had locked onto my chest, onto the metal second from the left in the top row, the one with the gold star and the smaller silver star at its center. He knew what it was. He had probably known men who didn't live to wear one. His napkin slipped from his lap to the floor. He didn't look down. He got to his feet slowly, the way a man of 70 plus gets to his feet when he's decided the moment requires it, regardless of what his knees think, and his right hand came up in the deliberate, precise arc of a salute that his body clearly remembered better than his joints would have liked. His voice filled the entire room, calm, certain, the voice of someone who spent years making sure they were heard over noise. Silver star in the room. I came to attention. I returned the salute, and then I heard the chairs. Let me back up about 48 hours because the ballroom is the end of the story, and you need the beginning to understand what that silence actually cost. My name is Victoria Callahan, Captain Victoria Callahan, USMC, though most people who know me from before the Corps still call me Tori, which is fine. I'm 34 years old. I have been a Marine for 11 years, a commissioned officer for 8, and a recipient of the Silver Star, third highest combat decoration this country awards, for 14 months. I grew up in a 4-bedroom colonial in Westchester County, New York, in a family whose primary concern, for as long as I can remember, was how things looked, not how they were, how they looked. My mother, Patricia Callahan, ran that household like a director runs a set, constant attention to the frame, to who was in it and what they were wearing and whether the overall picture conveyed the right impression to the right audience. My father, Richard Callahan, 40 years in finance, senior partner at a wealth management firm that I will not name because he still works there, understood the aesthetic requirements of his wife's world and largely outsourced his opinions about family matters to her. He was not a cruel man. He was an absent one, which in practice produced the same results. My brother Wesley, Wes, is 3 years younger than me. He's an architect. He designs commercial spaces in Manhattan, and he is very good at it, in the specific way that people are good at things when they have been told since childhood that they will be. He is marrying a woman named Claire Whitfield, whose family is old Connecticut money, and whose mother, Barbara Whitfield, has the particular energy of someone who has never had to introduce herself because everyone in the room already knew who she was. The Whitfields were the reason for the phone call. My mother called me 6 weeks before the wedding, which is 42 days before the story I'm about to tell you, and the call had the pacing of a conversation she had rehearsed. She asked about the flight, about whether I needed a hotel recommendation, even though I'd told her I was staying at the house, about the rehearsal dinner timeline. Then, after about 4 minutes of warm-up, she arrived at the thing she'd called to say. I was thinking about the ceremony, she said, about how you'd want to present. I was in my office at Camp Lejeune. It was 4:20 in the afternoon. I had a brief in 11 minutes. Present, I said, dress-wise, for the reception especially. The Whitfields are very refined, you know how Barbara is, and I just think that a uniform can be very, she paused, searching for the landing. A lot. People stare. It becomes a whole thing. I didn't say anything. I just thought, maybe this once, something simple. A dress. You have that beautiful navy one you wore to Cousin Ellen's, Mom. Just this once, Tori. Blend in. Then the real line, delivered soft, almost gently, with the particular cadence of someone who believes that the delivery makes the content acceptable. The military is embarrassing. I told her I'd think about it. She squeezed my arm through the phone. That's the only way I know how to describe the tone shift, the warmth that arrived the moment I gave her the non-answer she could work with, and said something about the florist, and we hung up. I sat at my desk for a moment, then I went to my brief. I want to tell you that I was angry. It would make a cleaner story. The truth is more complicated. The truth is that I had been hearing variations of this particular sentence for 10 years, since I was 23 years old, and told my parents I was enlisting, and my mother's face had done something I'd never seen it do before, a kind of horrified recalibration, like a GPS rerouting through bad terrain. The military. She said it then the same way she said it on the phone, as a category of things that happen to other people's children, people from different zip codes, people without the right last name and the right school and the right plan for their lives. The embarrassment was not about the war. It was never about the war, about the risk, about any of the things a mother might reasonably fear for a daughter going somewhere dangerous. It was about optics. It was about what to say at dinner parties when someone asked what Tori was doing these days. I had given her 10 years of trying to work around this. I came home in civilian clothes when she asked. I didn't bring it up at family events unless someone else did first. I learned to read the room, to sense the specific tension that arose when someone asked about my job and my mother was within earshot, and to give the abbreviated answer that would satisfy the question without making her flinch. I had been managing her discomfort with my life for a decade. I flew into JFK on a Thursday Thursday evening, rented a Ford Explorer at the airport, drove up to Westchester in the October dark. The house looked the same as it always did. The stone front, the cedar shutters, the flower boxes my mother replants every season with something appropriately tasteful. I had grown up inside it, and I had never entirely been able to think of it as home, which I understood was its own kind of information. My old bedroom was ready. She always kept it ready, which I used to find comforting and now found difficult to interpret. The dress blues were on a hanger on the closet door. I'd brought them because I always bring them, a habit from years of not knowing when you'll need them and then needing them. My mother came in while I was unpacking. She didn't look at the hanger. She talked about the rehearsal dinner, about the seating chart, about Barbara Whitfield's views on floral arrangements, and then she talked about the dress, the navy one. Did I bring it? It would be so lovely. The venue had this light, warm gold, and navy against warm gold was really— Mom, she stopped. We talked about this. I know, sweetheart. I just thought— I heard you. I said I'd think about it. She squeezed my arm, smiled, went downstairs. I stood in front of the mirror in my childhood bedroom and looked at myself for a long time. The text arrived at 8:47 the next morning. My Aunt Diane, my father's sister, who has never quite fit my mother's definition of the right kind of person and has therefore spent 30 years in the polite outer ring of our family's social universe, sent it without a message, just a screenshot. The kind of screenshot you send when you don't know what to say and you've decided that saying nothing is insufficient. It was the family group chat. I was not in it. I want you to sit with that for a moment. A family group chat that contains, I counted later, 22 people. Extended family, cousins, my father, my brother. The group had been active for 3 years. I had never been added. I had never been told it existed. The screenshot showed the conversation from that morning. My mother, 6:14 a.m. Please make sure no one encourages Tori to wear the uniform. The Whitfields are extremely refined and it would be humiliating. 6:14 in the morning. She had been awake thinking about this at 6 in the morning. A cousin named Jeff, 6:22 a.m. LOL agreed. My brother Wes, 7:03 a.m. Fine. Then my mother again, 7:09 a.m. Seat her at table 9, near the back, away from the head table. And then the line. The one she'd been saying through the kitchen vents and over the phone and in careful sideways references for 10 years, now typed out in 12-point font in a group chat with 22 members. The military is embarrassing, and I won't have her turning Wes's wedding into a parade. I read it once. I read it again. I read it a third time, more slowly. The way you read something when you're trying to determine whether the words actually say what you think they say. My father's name was in the chat. He had read the message at 6:16, 2 minutes after she sent it. His red receipt was there, his name and the timestamp, a small digital record of the moment he saw it and chose nothing. Fine, my brother had written. Not, that's not fair. Not, she served, let her wear it. Not even a silence that might be interpreted as reluctance. Fine. I set the phone down on the dresser, very carefully. The way you set something down when you're deciding what to do next and you need your hands free to think. I looked at the dress blues on the hanger. Then I looked at the navy dress, folded on the chair, waiting to make me anonymous. I thought about 10 years of managing rooms for her. 10 years of abbreviated answers and civilian clothes and sitting at the edge of conversations about my own life because the center of them made her uncomfortable. 10 years of performing a version of myself that was easier to explain at dinner parties. I thought about the screenshot, about 6:14 in the morning, about the specific kind of cruelty that wakes up before 6 a.m. to get ahead of someone else's dignity. I picked up the dress blues. I changed into them piece by piece. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. This is not a fast process. The uniform has a grammar, every component in a specific order, every element placed with intention. The dark coat, the standing collar, the trousers with their red stripe that I sometimes forget is there until I put them on. The cover, set at the precise angle that regulations specify and muscle memory has long since made automatic. Then the medals. I do this last because I do not rush this part. The ribbons and decorations go in a specific order. Precedence, left to right, top row first. I have done this enough times that my hands know the sequence without my brain's involvement. But I stopped at the silver star. My fingers slowed. I had to set it down and pick it back up twice before I could pin it straight. The silver star is not a large medal. People expect it to be larger. It's a gold star, about 1.5 inches across, with a smaller silver star at its center, suspended from a red, white, and blue ribbon. It does not look, on a table, like something that represents what it represents. I know what it represents. I was a captain commanding a rifle company in Helmand Province. I will not give you the operational details because some of them remain classified, and some of them belong to the men who were there and not to a YouTube story. What I will tell you is that there was a morning, a specific morning, gray light, wrong kind of quiet, and there were decisions made in about 4 seconds that the Marine Corps later determined warranted a citation, and that citation referenced Lance Corporal Daniel Brennan and 2 other men by name. Danny Brennan was 19 years old. He was from a town in Ohio that has 1 stoplight and a volunteer fire department. He'd given me a challenge coin the week before, a unit coin, beat up at the edges, warm from his pocket, and pressed it into my hand with the particular solemnity of a 19-year-old who has decided to perform a superstition. For luck, ma'am, you carry it. 3 of us came home from that morning. Danny was not one of the 3. I reached into the inside chest pocket of the coat and found the coin. Still warm, the way it always feels. The way metal holds temperature from the body. I held it for a moment. Then I put it back over my heart, behind the metals, where it belongs. I looked at myself in the mirror. Not a phase, not a parade, not an embarrassment. A Marine. I picked up my cover, set it at the correct angle, and went to my brother's wedding. I took a car service because I didn't want to walk in from the parking lot. This is the kind of small tactical decision I make without thinking about it anymore. Control Control the approach, control the entry point, choose your ground. The venue was a restored estate in northern Westchester, the kind of place that has been hosting Connecticut-adjacent celebrations for 100 years and has the stone walls and the carefully cultivated ivy to prove it. I came in through a side entrance, which added maybe 2 minutes to the walk. I was not trying to make an entrance. I was trying actually to do exactly what I'd been asked to do, to take my seat at table 9, near the back, and be quietly present for my brother's wedding, without disrupting my mother's vision of the day. I had made one decision. I decided that decision was mine to make. The ballroom was at full capacity when I came through the interior doors. 150 guests at round tables draped in ivory linen, a string quartet near the windows, the low, warm light that my mother had described to me as the venue's best feature. Warm gold against which a navy dress would have been perfectly lovely. I had taken maybe 10 steps when the air changed. The old man's name was Brigadier General Thomas Whitfield, USMC, retired. I didn't know that yet. I found it out later, in pieces, from 3 different people who came to find me between the ceremony and the reception dinner. I want to name him precisely because he deserves precision. Brigadier General Thomas Whitfield, United States Marine Corps, retired after 32 years of service, 2 combat tours in Vietnam, recipient of the Navy Cross and 2 Bronze Stars. Barbara Whitfield's father-in-law, the patriarch of the family my mother had spent 6 months curating her family's image for. He was wearing a tuxedo with the bearing of a man for whom a tuxedo was a performance of civilian life. His eyes were the kind of eyes that have been scanning rooms for threats long enough that the habit never fully retires. When he saw the Silver Star, he was already standing before he'd made the conscious decision to stand. His salute was parade ground perfect. And his voice, the voice that called out across 150 guests, across the string quartet, across the warm light and the ivory linen and the ice sculpture that my mother had agonized over, was the voice of a man who had given orders in places where being heard was the difference between living and not. Silver Star in the room, I came to attention. I returned the salute, the sound of chairs. I counted 12. I counted them later, when the counting was something I needed to do to make the moment real. 12 veterans in that room, scattered through 150 guests like the seeds of something my mother hadn't planned for. Some in tuxedos, one in a dark suit that didn't quite fit, the kind of suit you buy for weddings and funerals. An older woman near the windows who I later learned had served as an army nurse in the Gulf War. A young man, maybe 25, at a table near the back who stood with his hands at his sides and his chin up and his eyes forward with the specific stillness of someone who graduated from boot camp recently enough that the training is still in his body. Some saluted. Some just stood. All of them silent. All of them knowing, without introduction or explanation, exactly what a Silver Star means and what it costs. 12 people who understood, in the language that required no words, what my family had spent 10 years trying to fold into a closet. The ballroom was completely silent. Not the silence of awkwardness, not the silence of a room that doesn't know what to do. The silence of 150 people encountering something true. I found my seat, not table 9. A young woman in a headset, a venue coordinator named Ashley I later learned, who managed events there and who I have since thought about with something close to gratitude, appeared at my elbow within 30 seconds of me sitting down and said very quietly that the head table had a seat and General Whitfield had asked if I would join them. I said yes. I followed her to the front of the room. General Whitfield stood when I reached the table. A second time, less formal now. The movement of a man greeting a colleague. He extended his hand. Captain Callahan. His voice was lower now, conversational. Tom Whitfield. I'm Garrett's grandfather. He paused. Which makes us family, I suppose. I suppose it does, sir. He looked at the Silver Star for a moment, the way someone looks at something they know the weight of. Helmand? He asked. Yes, sir. He nodded once. He didn't ask the other question, the one civilians always ask. What happened? What did you do? Tell me the story. He didn't ask because he already knew the shape of the answer, and he understood that the shape was enough. He gestured to the chair to his right. I sat down at the head table. I want to tell you that my mother handled what happened next with grace. It would be a better story if she had. She was at the table to my left, the family table, where she had arranged herself and my father and my brother and Claire's parents, where she had been orchestrating the impression she wanted to make on the Whitfields for 6 months. When I sat down at the head table, at Tom Whitfield's right hand, she went still in the specific way a person goes still when something they planned very carefully is producing a result they did not plan for. Her color went, I was told afterward, from perfectly composed to something that a cousin described as haste. I didn't look directly at her. I didn't need to. I could feel the weight of her attention from 20 feet away, the specific sensation of being watched by someone who is performing calm. Barbara Whitfield came to the head table during cocktail hour and introduced herself to me with the warm, easy confidence of a woman whose family has sat at the front of rooms for generations. She had her father-in-law's eyes, the scanning quality, the quick assessment, but her energy was entirely social, entirely warm. Tom's been talking about you since you walked in, she said. She took my hand in both of hers. He doesn't talk about much at these things. He was very kind. He was very precise, she said, with the specific pride of someone who knows the difference. Tom is always precise. She went on to ask about my service with the genuine interest of someone who has spent her life inside military family culture. She asked which unit, which deployment, whether I was still active. When I told her I was, she nodded with the satisfaction of someone whose hypothesis has been confirmed. At some point in this conversation, I became aware that my mother had moved. She was at the edge of the cocktail space in conversation with one of the event coordinators, and her body language was the controlled version of someone who is trying to renegotiate something and is finding fewer options than they expected. I watched her for a moment. Then I turned back to Barbara Whitfield and answered her question question about the current state of officer training pipelines, which she had asked with the informed specificity of someone who has been paying attention to this for decades. The reception dinner is where I need to tell you about my brother. Wes found me at the edge of the cocktail hour, about 45 minutes after I'd sat down with General Whitfield. He looked like a man who had composed and discarded 3 opening sentences on his way across the room. Tori. Hey, Wes. I looked at him. Congratulations. Claire seems wonderful. She is. He paused. Listen, you don't have to. I want to. He stopped again. He has our father's way of going quiet when something requires him to be genuine. The silence is not emptiness, it's processing. What Mom said in that chat, I shouldn't have replied the way I did. No, I said. You shouldn't have. I know. I waited. I've been doing that, he said. The fine thing. For years. I do it because it's easier, and I know it's easier, and I keep doing it anyway. He looked at me directly for the first time. I'm sorry. I looked at my brother, 31 years old, the day of his wedding, in a well-fitted suit, with the expression of a man who has just said the true version of a thing he's been saying the abbreviated version of for a long time. Thank you, I said. That's enough for today. He nodded. He looked briefly, like he might say something else. Then he didn't. He went back to his wife, which was exactly the right thing to do. My mother found me at the edge of the garden terrace at 8:47 p.m. The dinner was clearing, the dancing starting, the night settled into the warm looseness of a party that had found its rhythm. She came up on my left side and stood next to me without saying anything for a moment. I waited. Tom Whitfield talked about you for 20 minutes at dinner, she said. Her voice was flat in a way I'd never heard it. All the performing mechanisms had gone offline. He told Barbara that Garrett was marrying into a family that produced a silver star, that Garrett should know what that means. I didn't say anything. I didn't know, she said. That he was. You wouldn't have known, I said. You weren't in the chat. She flinched. A small, controlled flinch, but it was there. I was trying to protect the family. I know what you were trying to protect. Silence. The people you called refined, I said very quietly, were the ones standing up. She didn't answer that. There wasn't an answer to it. She stood next to me for another moment, looking at the garden, at the lights strung through the trees, at the party her planning had built. Then she went inside. 7 months later. I am writing this from my quarters at Lejeune on a Sunday morning. Danny Brennan's coin is on the desk next to my coffee cup, which is where it sits when I'm writing. My brother Wes calls now. Not every week, but enough. The calls are real ones. The kind where he asks questions and listens to the answers, and sometimes tells me things about his own life that he would not have told me a year ago. Claire, his wife, messages me occasionally. She asked for a book recommendation last month, which is how I knew we were going to be fine. My mother has not mentioned the uniform since October. She called in November and in December, and the calls were the calls she has always made. Surface level, carefully managed, the orbits of a woman who does not know how to be in a room with what happened but cannot quite bring herself to stop calling. I answer. We talk about the house, about Wes, about whether I'm eating enough, about nothing in particular. I am not waiting for an apology. I stopped waiting for that specific thing a long time ago. An apology requires a person to sit with the full weight of what they did, and I have come to understand that my mother has never fully sat still in her life. She is always managing, always framing. The apology, if it ever comes, will be a managed version of an apology, and I have decided I can live with that. I have made peace with more difficult things. General Thomas Whitfield emailed me in November. His aide sent it through official channels, which made me smile. The formality of it, the precision. He was going to be in Jacksonville in February and wondered if I was available for coffee. He said he had a daughter who was considering ROTC and had some questions. I wrote back the same day. I said, "Sir, I'd be honored. Name the time." He named Aero 900 on a Thursday. I was there at 8:45 because precision, as Barbara Whitfield correctly noted, is the point. I keep the screenshot my Aunt Diane sent me. It's in a folder on my phone that I don't open often. I don't keep it as evidence. I don't need evidence. I keep it because it is the document of the exact moment I stopped managing my mother's discomfort with my life and started just living it. The military is embarrassing, she wrote at 6 in the morning. She was talking about me. She was wrong about what I was. She was right that I was going to walk into that ballroom. Danny Brennan pressed a coin into my hand and told me to carry it. I carried it. 12 strangers stood up in a room my mother spent 6 months curating, and the silence they made was the truest thing that happened in it. You can't dress code that. You can't seat it at table 9.